Hey everyone, welcome back to Reading with Tatiana. Today I'm going to do a March recap of the books I read this past month. I was fortunate to be able to have some time to read 4 books. They were quite different. Some was fictional, some was memoirs, and some were short and some were long. Before I get into my recap, I always would like to ask if you can, please subscribe to my channel. If you like what you see, please give a thumbs up. And if you have any comments for my channel, or if you've read any of the 4 books, I would love to hear your review on the book as well. The first book I completed in March, I actually started in February, but because it was quite a thick book, it had over 500, I think 70 pages, it bled into March as well. So the first book I finished in March was the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. This book is a prequel of the Hunger Games trilogy, and it was set 60 to 70 years before the actual Hunger Games. It's also the origin story of President Snow. And if you have read the Hunger Games trilogy, you know that President Snow is the ultimate villain. So it's really cool to read his origin story and to see how he became the man who he is in the Hunger Games. I gave this book a 4 out of 5, and I really enjoyed it because even though it was such a long and thick book, it never felt like there was any fluff or it dragged at any points, and every character did the role they were supposed to carry the story forward. So I really recommend this book, especially if you've read the Hunger Games trilogy. The second book I got to read in March is The Tattooist of Auschwitz by Heather Morris. I gave this book a 5 out of 5, and it's a solid read. And the reason why I gave it a 5 out of 5 is because it shares the story of Leo, who is the tattooist of Auschwitz. He actually is a Jewish person from Slovakia, and he goes to Auschwitz as a prisoner, and he becomes the tattooist. So he actually starts tattooing the incoming prisoners. I won't do any spoilers, but this book is just amazing to me because by chance, it's just so lucky we get to even read it and experience it, because Heather Morris she's a New Zealander, and just by chance when Leo escaped Auschwitz and the Nazi party and that kind of stuff, he eventually fled to New Zealand as well. So it's by chance that Heather was able to meet someone who knew Leo and was like, hey, I know someone that has a good story worth telling. And even though I gave this book a 5 out of 5, the writing isn't amazing, which makes sense because Heather Morris is actually a screenplay writer and not a novelist. But having said that, I think the story is amazing, even if the writing isn't great, and it's definitely worth reading. She also interviewed Leo over the course of 3 years, and then he passed away in 2006. And then from when he passed until this novel was published, she actually did a lot of researching and fact checking, and it came out in 2018. So I think I read somewhere that this book is like 95% accurate, so it's pretty cool to read a accurate portrayal of someone's experience during the camps of the Nazi party. The third book I read is How to Lose Friends and Alienate People by Toby Young. It is also a memoir like the Tattooist of Auschwitz. However, I gave this book a 1 out of 5. It wasn't really enjoyable. Toby Young, he is a UK journalist or social commentator, and he's obsessed with American Hollywood culture. So he goes to New York City in the 90s to work for Vanity Fair as a writer, and he pretty much details his experience in New York. The only redeeming qualities of this book is I felt like it was really cool how he described how UK perceives celebrities compared to America and how it's jarringly very different. But I gave it 1 out of 5 because I didn't really like Toby as a person. He was very abrasive. A lot of things that happened to him, he knew himself that he kind of like deserved it. So it's really hard to have any empathy for him. The only aspect of the book that I did like, I guess, is he shares his struggle with alcoholism and he's very candid about it. So I feel if that's something that you're interested in, it's kind of cool to hear someone's experience firsthand. And also other reason that this book is maybe worth reading is, as you can see, it was made into a movie with Simon Pegg, Kristen Dunst, Megan Fox, and Jeff Bridges. So I was kind of drawn to this book because it's made into a movie adaptation. And I haven't seen the movie yet, but I'm going to, so we'll see how the movie is compared to the book. And yeah, let me know if you read it and if you also enjoyed it or not, because I definitely did not enjoy this book. The fourth and last book I read for the month of March is The Curious Incident of the Dog in Nighttime by Mark Haddon. This is a really cool book. I gave it a 4 out of 5. By chance, I picked it, and it happens to be also on BBC's top 100 books of to read before you die, which is pretty cool because this is like a modern, I would say contemporary book. So it's cool how it's written very recently in history, but it still has made the top 100 list. So basically, the book starts with Christopher, who is a teenager, and he comes across his neighbor's dog who is murdered. And the dog's name is Wellington, and Christopher basically wants to figure out who murdered the dog. And it's cool because the story is told from Christopher's perspective, and you learn pretty quickly on by his reactions and interaction with people that he is on the spectrum. It's never clear what it is, but we can assume it's autism. So this book is really enjoyable because it brings to light what it's like to be on the spectrum and how things that us people who are normal or typical don't really think about things or spiral, and how life is so easy for us. So it's really cool because Mark Haddon, the author, did a really good job sharing the struggles that people on the spectrum go through. I gave this book only a 4 out of 5 and not a 5 out of 5 because despite really enjoying it, there's a lot of math in this book because the protagonist, Christopher, really enjoyed math, and there were quite a bit of math problems sprinkled throughout the novel, which I didn't really enjoy, but I'm sure it's not a deal breaker for a lot of people, but for me, it was enough to give it -1 star. That's my wrap up for March for the 4 books I read. Hope you enjoyed my quick review. If you read the book as well or you want a more in-depth review, I will link my videos below of my full depth review for each book. And I'll also share the books I have for my April to be read. The first one is Tina Fey Bossy Pants. I'm really looking forward to reading her book because I really enjoy her work. And then my next book I have as well is Still Alice by Lisa Genova, which talks about a woman, Alice, who is in her 50s, who is a neurologist professor and is experiencing early onset Alzheimer's. This was also made into a movie, which I saw years ago, so it's really cool to read, or it's going to be cool to read the experience as well. One of the other books I'm going to read for April is called The Paris Library. I don't know who's it by off the top of my head, but it's also on my list because I'm starting a book club in the city I just moved into, and that was the book we picked. And then if I finish that book, then I'll also have a other book in April, which I don't know yet, but if you have any suggestions, please comment down below and I'll see if I can find it at my local library. Bye guys!